Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top focus tonight on Gravitas, a bridge linking Russia and Crimea has been blown up in a massive explosion carried out by Ukraine's special forces. The underwater attack marks a fresh, dangerous escalation in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. What happens here onwards, what really happened, and what does all of this mean for the war at this point? We get to that in just a bit, and here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What does Russia's silence following Ukraine's massive drone attack on Russian air bases mean? How is Russia planning to avenge that attack? We get you a special report on how India's homegrown systems outclassed Pakistan's Chinese and Turkish imports. All this and lots more coming your way. Ukraine has launched another daring strike, but this time the battleground is not land or sky, it is underwater. Ukraine's security service carried out a precise underwater sabotage mission targeting the Crimean bridge, a critical supply route connecting the Russian mainland to Crimea. Over 1,100 kilograms of explosives were placed beneath the surface and detonated near the structural pillars of that bridge. This was no spontaneous act. Ukrainian officials said it took months of planning and coordination, and this attack marks a fresh turning point in Ukraine's strategy. In fact, previous attacks on the bridge in 2022 and 2023 focused on visible infrastructure, but this time Ukraine went beneath the surface, literally. It's a calculated shift from direct attacks to underwater guerrilla-style attacks. Hitting Russia perhaps where it hurts the most, its military logistics. But this bridge is not just about steel and concrete. It's a symbol, a major one. In fact, the Russian president inaugurated the crucial bridge in the year 2018. For the Kremlin, this bridge represents territorial conquest and political dominance. For Ukraine and its president, Volodymyr Zelensky, striking the bridge is a direct challenge to Vladimir Putin. The Crimean Peninsula, strategically placed in the Black Sea, has long been a point of contention. Back in 2014, as Ukraine reeled from a pro-democracy uprising that ousted the pro-Kremlin president, Russian forces moved swiftly and seized Crimea, and since then, Moscow has used Crimea as a launch pad for operations, particularly since the war broke out in 2022. Sevastopol, the peninsula's major port city, in fact, serves as the main hub for Russia's coveted Black Sea fleet. Control over this part means control over much of the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. reiterating why Ukraine's repeated attacks on the Crimean bridge are more than tactical. They are symbolic. Historically, Crimea's status has been complex. In 1954, the Soviet leader transferred Crimea from the Russian Republic to the Ukrainian Republic, both part of the USSR at the time. After the Soviet collapse in 1991, Crimea became part of an independent Ukraine. But Russia never fully let go. Its naval presence in Sevastopol remained. And Crimea continued to house the Russian fleet until Moscow's full annexation. Even during the peace talks held in Turkey on Monday, the peninsula and other areas controlled by Russia became a main point of contention. Ukraine said it would not accept Russian terms that include surrendering large parts of territory or military limitations. This recent operation follows a wave of Ukrainian offensives. Just this Sunday, Ukrainian forces targeted Russian strategic bomber fleets, aircraft capable of delivering nuclear weapons. Just a few hours ago, Russia said Ukraine was behind Saturday's rail blasts in Bryansk region, which borders Ukraine. The blast led to a passenger train derailing, killing at least 7 people and wounding dozens more. Through these attacks, Kiev appears determined to undermine Russian strength. But what does this mean for the future, for the war? You see, Moscow is yet to issue a formal response to the latest bridge attack, but history suggests retaliation is coming, and likely not in measured doses. The question now is, what exactly will be the scope of that response? Last November, Russia fired the Orishnik, an intermediate-range missile with nuclear capability, as a warning to Western nations. Striking Ukraine's Dnipro, that same missile could re-enter the picture. Moscow and Minsk have now reportedly agreed to deploy these nuclear-capable missiles on Belarusian soil by the end of this year itself. So will Russia fast-track that deployment timeline as part of its broader response is the question, because Putin is likely to view such attacks as not just military strikes, but personal ones. He has responded against Ukraine with devastating force in the past, and with Russian pride bruised, especially after strikes to its air bases, and now this latest underwater attack, there is likely to be a significant retaliation. Ukraine has made its move. It was deliberate, strategic, symbolically powerful, but now it has to wait for Putin's next devastating move. How far is Putin and Russia willing to go? We will have to wait and watch for that answer. In fact, Ukraine's drone attack deep inside Russia on Sunday leaves behind crucial questions. How will Russia respond? The audacious Ukrainian attacks targeted Russian bombers. All this while, Russia is closely assessing and maintaining a strategic silence. And our next report takes a closer look at the Russian nuclear power enshrined in its nuclear triad. Take a look.
Steel in the skies. Fire beneath the oceans. Thunder rolling on land. Russia's nuclear triad stands as a chilling reminder of the Cold War doctrine, now sharpened by 21st century modernization. This is not saber-rattling, it is Moscow's ultimate deterrent designed to endure the unthinkable. Russia's nuclear deterrent rests on a triad forged for maximum survivability. Land-based missiles, strategic bombers, and submarine-launched weapons, each capable of responding even if the others are destroyed. A nuclear triad refers to a country's ability to deliver nuclear weapons in 3 ways. Each arm of the triad is built on a simple principle: survivability. If one part is destroyed in a first strike, the other 2 can respond, ensuring mutual assured destruction. It's a brutal logic. If everyone can retaliate, no one strikes first. For Russia, this structure isn't merely theoretical. It's tested, deployed, and very much real. Russia has several long-range missiles at its disposal, including the Sarmat missile, called Satan by the West. Then there's Avangard missile, Yars and Iskander missiles. The strategic missile forces command hundreds of these launchers spread across vast territory, always ready to respond within minutes. On the seas, Russia's Borei A-class submarines silently patrol the depths. Each is loaded with nuclear-tipped missiles capable of striking targets thousands of kilometers away. These stealthy giants form the backbone of Russia's second strike ability, nearly impossible to neutralize in a first wave of attack. This triad is not static, it's evolving. Moscow is actively upgrading its systems, integrating AI, hypersonic tech and satellite communications. Russia boasts that its strategic forces can withstand even a nuclear-first strike and still deliver a devastating counterattack. In the skies, the Tu-160M White Swan and Tu-95MS strategic bombers stand by with cruise missiles and nuclear payloads. These long-range heavyweights loiter in airspace, flexing deterrence through presence. Russia has the world's biggest nuclear arsenal. The US, with more than 5,000 nukes, comes a close second, followed by China, France, the UK, India and Pakistan. Clearly, these weapons can unleash doomsday, something meant as a deterrent and never to be used again. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And we're shifting focus for now. Let's talk about Operation Sindoor. India's indigenous weaponry did not just perform, it dominated. Homegrown systems like the BrahMos missile, Akash air defense, outclassed Pakistan's Chinese and Turkish imports, redefining the battlefield and showcasing India's strategic autonomy.
From the skies to command bunkers, Indian-made systems struck with precision, while Pakistan's China-supplied arms faltered under fire. Operation Sindoor is a pivotal moment in military history. In response to the Pahalgam terror attack, India executed precision strikes deep inside Pakistani territory, targeting terrorist infrastructure. While Pakistan scrambled with its Chinese-built JF-17s and Chinese-made radars, the difference was clear. Imported hardware meant slower reaction time, poor interoperability, and an overwhelming lack of resilience. Weaponry should be tailor-made and used smartly to gain tactical advantage. On the other hand, India relied heavily on its own weaponry. At the heart of the Indian response was seamless integration. Every unit from Army to Air Force spoke the same tactical language, processed threats with the same software, and executed strikes with split-second clarity. It wasn't just about speed, it was about synchronization, a war rhythm composed and conducted on Indian soil, a fact asserted by the head of the Indian Armed Forces on how India changed its tactics to pummel Pakistan.
What I can say is, on 7th and the initial stages, there were losses, but the numbers, and that's not important. What was important is why did these losses occur and what did we do after that. So we rectified tactics and then went back on 7th, 8th and 10th in large numbers to hit air bases deep inside Pakistan. Penetrated all their air defenses with impunity. Carried out precision strikes.
Operation Sindoor underscores the efficacy of India's indigenous defense capabilities, marking a shift towards strategic self-reliance and setting a new precedent in military engagements. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And before we go on any further, here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. At least 27 Palestinians killed near a food distribution point in Rafah. We get you the complete story, more about what happened and the latest from on the ground. A detailed report coming up on the situation in India's northeast, which is reeling under severe floods, leaving lakhs affected. We tell you how over 200 prisoners escaped from a Pakistan prison following an earthquake in a serious jolt for Pakistan authorities. Over 100 prisoners remain on the loose. On to breaking news coming in right this minute. New revelations from India's Operation Sindoor. According to reports, it has emerged that 6 Pakistani fighter aircraft never made it home. In fact, ANI has obtained exclusive details of a devastating assessment revealing the Indian Air Force's unprecedented destruction of Pakistani military assets during the recent operations. Intelligence sources operating within the conflict zone have disclosed to ANI that Pakistan's air capabilities suffered catastrophic losses across multiple fronts. The Indian Air Force delivered a crippling blow to the Pakistan Air Force, reportedly destroying 6 fighter jets, 2 high-value surveillance aircraft, over 10 armed drones, a C-130 transport aircraft, and several cruise missiles. And ANI reports citing sources involved in the Indian operation against Pakistan, also reporting that the Indian Air Force relied exclusively on air-launched cruise missiles, deploying no BrahMos surface-to-surface missiles. The coordinated strikes executed by the Indian fighters, including Rafales and Su-30s, targeted multiple Pakistani installations with surgical precision. And that's not all. According to the report, a targeted strike on a hangar conducted by Rafale and Su-30 jets obliterated a fleet of Chinese-made winged long-mail drones, severely damaging Pakistan's offensive drone capability. Let's go straight across now to Siddhant Sibbu, who's with us for more on that. Siddhant, what more can you share with us?
Well, this report has come out. We're waiting for more details, but let me point to what the Indian CDS, Anil Chauhan, said earlier in the day. He was asked a question as to the Pakistani losses, and he said that based on technical parameters like electronic signal intelligence, at some point India will come out with the data and share it. So an assessment will be shared by the Indian government on Pakistani losses. We know that India has already given details about the strikes on air bases from Noor Khan to Sargodha to Sargadu and other areas of Pakistan and Pakistan occupied areas as well. But essentially, remember that Pakistan has suffered this major loss. It has accepted the loss of its men as well. Of course, Pakistan remains in its own world where it believes it has won. But the reality is the losses are something that are going to put a pressure on the Pakistani military, especially the army chief, Mr. Munir. But all in all, we're waiting for more details. India, of course, has been very prompt in giving details about the strikes it took carried on terror strikes on the terror camps in Pakistan under Operation Sindoor on 7th May. Post that, we know that India had reached out to the Pakistani side, telling them that this is not a strike on Pakistani military installations, and it is something that they should understand. But instead of cooperating with India, they indulged in an attack on India. India was able to thwart that, of course, and we all know the history as well. But all in all, it looks like those 4 days are something that is going to be talked about for much longer time as to how India was able to establish not only air dominance but also dominance in the sea, and also when it comes to the land as well.
Right, we're leaving it there for the moment. Siddhant, thanks very much for joining us. we're shifting focus to Gaza now. At least 27 Palestinians were killed in Israeli fire, gunned down near a food distribution point in Rafah. This is the third attack near an aid site to be reported in the last 3 days. In a place which is already on the brink of famine, where millions are starving, displaced, desperate, the scenes of devastation coming out of Gaza prompted the United Nations to demand a probe. On Tuesday, the United Nations called for a prompt and impartial investigation, with the authorities in Gaza accusing Israel of deliberately luring civilians into kill zones.
The attacks on distraught civilians trying to access the paltry amounts of food aid in Gaza are unconscionable. For a third day running, people were killed around an aid distribution site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. This morning, we received information that dozens more people were killed and injured. There must be a prompt and impartial investigation into each of these attacks and those responsible held to account.
Now, that's a big charge on Israel. But as the death toll in Gaza climbs, so is the international concern about war crimes, accountability, and a humanitarian operation unraveling into chaos. On the ground, it was horror in Rafah. Palestinians rushed to carry the injured, some lifeless. Those that were killed collecting aid were civilians just trying to reach food. According to the Hamas-run authorities in Gaza, 102 people have died while collecting aid since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is an Israeli-backed initiative, began operating in the Palestinian enclave. This new aid system has been started by Israel following the 80-day blockade on food deliveries it imposed on Gaza. The Israeli aid agency pays American contractors to distribute food from a handful of sites that are mostly in Israeli-occupied areas of southern Gaza. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation replaced the older system that used to be overseen by the UN. While Israel says that the GHF is needed to prevent Hamas from stealing and stockpiling food, the United Nations has opposed the Israeli aid system. The UN says that GHF endangers civilians by forcing them to walk for miles to get food, and could facilitate an Israeli plan to displace the population of northern Gaza, along with UN. Other aid groups also saying that the bloodshed in recent days just proves their point about the risk of the new Israeli aid system. On the shooting, the Israeli military says troops admitted to firing shots, but they were evasive shots near individuals who had strayed from the designated access routes and were not listening to warnings. According to the Israeli army, the shooting occurred around 550 yards from the distribution site and says it is looking into the details. The International Committee of the Red Cross confirmed that their field hospital in Rafah received 184 casualties, with 27 dead and many in critical condition. Doctors describing the scene as absolute carnage.
We've had a shooting at the GHF aid distribution centre near Rafah. A lot of the injured people were taken to the local field hospitals, we think to ICRC, but we have had an extortionate amount of people come to the door. As you can see behind me, we've got all the bays are full and they're all gunshot wounds. It's absolute carnage here, and there are even more people in the main emergency department.
The war has killed more than 54,000 Palestinians. In northern Gaza, 3 Israeli soldiers were also killed in fighting on Tuesday as the military pushes on with its months-long offensive against Hamas in Gaza. Palestinians have to now put up with poor hygiene. And the sentiment on the ground being, where do we go? Their words echo those of millions, more than 2.3 million people who now face starvation, displacement, death, with nowhere left to run, in a way. Shifting focus for now, our next story is from Pakistan. In a bizarre turn of events, over 200 prisoners escaped from a jail following an earthquake. Sounds unreal, right? But then this is Pakistan we are talking about. What exactly happened? What is known so far? The prisoners reportedly escaped from a jail after chaos erupted during a precautionary evacuation following an earthquake. How many? At least 216 prisoners escaped after the chaos erupted, and over 100 remain on the loose. These are no ordinary developments. How can an earthquake result in prisoners roaming free? Sounds like the script of a dark comedy. But unfortunately, it's happening for real. This is Pakistan's grim reality. What else is known about what happened? The jail superintendent, Arshad Shah, reportedly said over 600 prisoners were taken out from their barracks during the tremors, and amid the chaos, 216 managed to flee. Sindh's Home Minister has reportedly termed the incident the most serious jailbreak in recent years, saying that all escaped inmates were identified and targeted raids were underway at their residences and adjoining areas. Law enforcement authorities have launched a joint operation to track down the remaining escapees. The minister added that an inquiry committee would be formed to investigate the incident. This is a serious jolt for Pakistan's law enforcement, apart from the actual earthquakes that the country is dealing with. Karachi has been hit by a series of earthquakes in the last 24 hours. In fact, Karachi has witnessed a total of 21 earthquakes since Sunday. The country is experiencing a surge in seismic activity. These earthquakes are attributed to the activation of fault lines in Karachi's Landhi area. The epicenters of these low-intensity earthquakes, measuring 2.5 to 3.6 magnitude on the Richter scale, were recorded in Malir, Defense Housing Authority, Korangi, Gadab town, among other areas, and these earthquakes are attributed to the activation of fault lines in Karachi's Landhi area. Pakistan's location in a seismically active region makes it vulnerable to earthquakes. The country's unique geology, with several fault lines running beneath it, contributes to the frequency and intensity of earthquakes. And Pakistan's chief meteorologist has attributed the recent tremors in Karachi to the activation of the Landhi fault line. The Landhi fault region runs beneath Karachi, particularly affecting areas like Landhi, Malir and Gadab. While the Landhi fault region has not produced major earthquakes in the past, the chief meteorologist has advised that minor tremors for another week. But what exactly are fault lines and how do they form? Fault lines are fractures in the Earth's crust where tectonic plates meet and shift, often resulting in earthquakes. These lines are crucial in understanding geological processes and predicting seismic activity. Fault lines form due to tectonic forces that cause stress in the Earth's crust, resulting in fractures as the crust deforms and breaks. Fault lines can form when plates move apart, collide, or when they slide past each other horizontally. This is all understandable, but what is not is how prisoners can so easily escape. And this is the last kind of embarrassment that Pakistan needs right now. Hundreds of thousands of people across northeast India, especially those located in Assam, Sikkim, Manipur, have been severely impacted by the ongoing floods caused by the rainfall, with reports of houses being ravaged, people losing their belongings, rescue operations underway across multiple parts in these states. According to reports, at least 34 people have died in the floods. Amid the unrelenting rainfall, on Monday, the Indian Meteorological Department had already issued a red alert over major districts across Assam, Sikkim and Manipur, and there appears to be no respite for lakhs of people residing in these states and those executing the rescue operations. With the IMD predicting heavy to very heavy rainfall in the northeast region for the next 2 days, earlier today, the Indian Prime Minister spoke to the Manipur governor as well as the chief ministers of Assam and Sikkim, assuring the leaders full support and assistance from the government. And according to the Assam State Disaster Management Authority, the death toll in Assam from floods and landslides has reached 11, with 6 people losing their lives due to floods and 5 others due to landslides. In Assam, it is estimated that over 4 lakh people of across 22 districts have been affected by the floods. In fact, the overflowing Tista River has also led to large-scale infrastructural damage in Assam. Overflowing rivers have also caused flash floods in Manipur, impacting over 56,000 people in the state. Drone footage showed the impact of the floods across the state, showing the capital, Imphal, heavily flooded. At least 3 army personnel have died. 6 others continue to remain missing after a rain-triggered landslide struck a military camp in Sikkim's Lachen district on Sunday evening. A multi-agency rescue operation is underway. And we're staying on with news coming in from India, getting you the latest on the COVID-19 infections in the country. India continues to witness a fresh spike. India's active COVID caseload has crossed 4,000, touching the mark of 4,026 according to the Union Health Ministry data. 37 deaths have been reported due to the infection since January. A total of 65 new COVID-19 infections were recorded in the last 24 hours. Kerala remains the worst affected with the highest number of active cases, followed by Maharashtra, Gujarat, Delhi, West Bengal. According to the data shared by the Health Ministry, Gujarat reported 59 new infections, followed by Karnataka with 58, West Bengal 41, and Tamil Nadu with 26 new cases. In fact, the northeastern state of Assam has also reported 1 new case in the last 24 hours. A total of 5 deaths were reported in the past 24 hours, mostly due to pre-existing health-related issues. In Kerala, an 80-year-old male succumbed to COVID-19. The individual was diagnosed with severe pneumonia and hypertension. Maharashtra reported 2 deaths. A 70-year-old female was diagnosed with diabetes mellitus and succumbed to COVID-19. Another 73-year-old female with similar conditions also succumbed to the infection. In Tamil Nadu, a 69-year-old female was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and Parkinson's disease. In West Bengal, a 43-year-old female succumbed to COVID-19. The woman was diagnosed with an acute kidney injury and suffered a septic shock. The overall rise in new cases has been sharp. Kerala, currently the worst hit state, accounts for 1,416 active cases, followed by Maharashtra with 494, Gujarat 397, Delhi 393, and West Bengal a total of 372 active cases. Other parts with rising numbers including Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan. Indian health officials have reassured the people not to panic as all medical infrastructure is in place, and experts have advised keeping symptoms like nasal congestion, nausea, gut problems and throat pain under observation. Sudan is reeling under its worst possible humanitarian crisis since the civil war started. With people fleeing, children hit the hardest by the ongoing fighting. According to the UN Refugee Agency officials, the number of people who fled Sudan since 2023 has now surpassed 4 million, with many facing inadequate shelter due to funding shortages in an unprecedented displacement crisis. Many who fled the country have reportedly survived extreme terror and violence.
Of yesterday, 4 million people now have fled Sudan into neighboring country since the start of the war, now in its 3rd year. The 4 million people, a devastating milestone in what is the world's most damaging displacement crisis at the moment. If the conflict continues in Sudan, 1,000 more people, we expect 1,000 more people will continue to flee, putting regional and global stability at stake.
And among the worst hit are children, according to Sudan's National Council for Child Welfare. Over 17 million Sudanese children are out of school. 5,000 have been kidnapped or missing. 3,000 children have died in the war. As per the UN, children are often victims of extreme level violence, with the UN report highlighting a 21% increase in grave violations against children in 2023 alone, including child abuse, slavery, forcible recruitment as fighters, all of which have increased manyfold since then. This is extremely concerning. Recently, Britain's Foreign Secretary said that the crisis in Sudan needs international attention.
It's been an ambivalence, equivocation, and certainly an absence of exposure to this crisis globally and across much of the Western world.
The fighting which broke out between the Sudanese armed forces and the rival Rapid Support Forces in April 2023 has taken a disastrous shape, killing tens of thousands of people and uprooting about 13 million reportedly. Sudan shares borders with 7 countries, these being Chad, South Sudan, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Central African Republic and Libya. And more than 800,000 of the refugees, 800,000 of the refugees have arrived in Chad, who are living in dire conditions due to massive funding shortage. Add to that shortage of food and critical supplies, adding to the woes of the people, and the political fractures have only made matters worse. On Saturday, former UN official Kamel Idris was sworn in as Sudan's new Prime Minister, marking the first Prime Minister appointment since the 2021 coup that ousted the civilian leadership and established a caretaker government. However, it's unclear how much power he will really have as the army fights against the paramilitary RSF, and with the humanitarian crisis mounting every single day, will the people of the country get relief anytime soon? There are more questions than answers at this point. Britain is rearming for a new era of danger. With threats multiplying from Russia to China, London pledges billions for submarines, nukes, cutting-edge weapons. The message is clear. The UK will not be caught unprepared. Take a look at this report.
The war drums are not distant anymore. Britain hears them, from the Arctic to the Pacific. Britain is rearming. After years of underfunding and strategic drift, the United Kingdom has slammed the brakes on military complacency. In a seismic new strategic defense review, London has declared a full-spectrum military revival, expanding its submarine fleet, boosting troop numbers, and even considering tax hikes to prepare the nation for an era of permanent global confrontation. UK PM says that the efforts would also lead to job creation.
We will defend our homeland by investing in our air and missile defence to better protect these islands. We will create a hybrid Royal Navy, blending drones with warships, submarines and aircraft to patrol the North Atlantic and beyond, supporting thousands of brilliant shipbuilding jobs, including right here in Govan.
A key highlight is the expansion of Britain's nuclear deterrent. Submarine-based Trident systems will be reinforced, and nuclear doctrine is being re-evaluated to include a preemptive retaliatory posture. Additionally, more funds are being channeled into cyber warfare, space command, hypersonic weapon development, and AI-led battlefield systems. The idea is to make the UK Army 10 times more lethal.
But in a more dangerous world, the SDR confirms that we must move to warfighting readiness. Warfighting readiness means stronger deterrence. We need stronger deterrence to avoid the huge costs, human and economic, that wars create. And we prevent wars by being strong enough to fight and win them.
But this transformation comes with a price. Economists warn that tax rises may be unavoidable to fund the billions needed for warfighting readiness. Even as the government promises to raise defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027, as UK PM Keir Starmer warns that the threats UK now faces is more serious, more immediate, and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War. This is a nation not preparing for a war it wants, but for the wars it can no longer ignore.
On to Syria now, in what can be called a large-scale prisoner exchange. The Syrian authorities and a Kurdish-led force exchanged more than 400 prisoners as part of a deal reached early this year between the two sides. The prisoner exchange in the northern city of Aleppo is a step in the process of confidence-building measures between the government in Damascus and the US-backed and Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or the SDF. And this follows a similar exchange back in April and marks the second phase of the prisoner swap effort since the political transition in December. The deputy governor of Aleppo province said a total of 470 prisoners were released by both sides. He added that the exchange aims to reduce tensions on the ground and more prisoners expected to be released soon. One freed prisoner, a civilian, said he was being mistakenly detained by the SDF and held with the biggest terrorists, quote-unquote, including Islamic State.
The prison that they put us in was a prison that had Islamic State members and terrorists. They put us with the biggest Islamic State leaders and the biggest terrorists. I told them I'm a civilian. I am a civilian who took a wrong road. I lost 6 months of my life. 180 days. I died 180 times in there.
And this comes as officials aim to ease the tensions between the Damascus government and the US-backed SDF. Back in March, Syria's interim government signed a deal with the Kurdish-led authority that controls the country's northeast. The deal included a ceasefire and the merging of the main US-backed force into the Syrian army. And since the deal was inked, the clashes between the SDF and the Turkey-backed Syrian National Army almost stopped in northern Syria after months of fighting that left dozens killed or injured on both sides. Across the country, Syria's new rulers are struggling to assert control and achieve political settlements with different ethnic and religious groups, as well as peace in the country's fractured post-war landscape. What lies ahead is the big question. In a dramatic protest against France's economic ties with Russia, Greenpeace activists pulled off an unusual stunt in Paris. They stole a wax statue of the president, Emmanuel Macron, while staging a demonstration outside the Russian embassy. The action started early Monday when Greenpeace activists rolled up to the Russian embassy with an unexpected guest, President Macron, but not the real one, a wax statue. The lifelike figure had been swiped from Paris's famous museum earlier that day. The media captured the brief but symbolic protest as it unfolded in real time as activists unfurled a banner reading, Ukraine burns, business goes on, quote unquote. The message was absolutely direct. Stop French companies from continuing business with Russia in sectors like gas, fertilizers, nuclear energy. The organization accused Macron of sending mixed messages on the Ukraine war. They said that on one hand, he supports Ukraine publicly, and on the other hand, he has allowed French companies to profit from Russian deals. In fact, the entire protest lasted just about a few minutes. The statue was then packed up and removed just as swiftly as it had come. According to the police, the activists disguised themselves as museum staff and slipped out a side exit with the wax statue, which in itself was worth an estimated 40,000 euros. The museum says it's been promised the figure will be returned unharmed. And this will not be the first time a wax statue of a leader has gone missing as a mark of protest. The wax figure of French politician and former president was also stolen from the museum in 1983. At that time, he was the mayor of Paris. The statue was found a few days later at a zoo. And then the statue of another prominent French politician, also president, was stolen by angry motorcyclists during his term at the Élysée Palace between 1974 and 1981. So going by the history of the protests for this museum, it's a deja vu moment. A massive cloud of dust from the Sahara Desert is on its way to the US. It already blanketed much of the Caribbean on its way to southern US in what's being called the most significant dust event of the year, stretching over 3,200 kilometers from Jamaica to beyond Barbados and over 1,200 kilometers from the Turks and Caicos down to Trinidad and Tobago. This vast plume is headed for the United States. It has triggered sneezes, cough, watery eyes across the region. Local authorities are urging people with asthma or allergies to stay indoors or wear masks outdoors. According to the U.S. National Weather Service in Puerto Rico, the concentration of dust is unusually high, reaching a 0.55 aerosol optical depth, the most so far this year. That's a scientific measure of how much sunlight is blocked by particles in the air. And there's a lot of it. The plume is expected to reach Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi later this week. Though it's likely to lose some density as it travels north, still Caribbean islands saw the worst of it. The dust is so thick in some parts, it's visibly dimming the sun.
Dust travels all the way here from Africa and affects us so heavily is absolutely crazy because the distance between Barbados and Africa is vast.
The dust plume season is just beginning, but this one is already breaking records. In 2020, a similar event was called the Godzilla dust cloud. It had choked the entire region with the densest plume in 50 years. Now, another enormous plume, roughly the size of continental US, is drifting over the Atlantic. By the time it hits the Gulf Coast, it would have traveled over 8,000 kilometers. The US National Weather Service warns of poor air quality, especially for people with respiratory issues. Even if the dust thins out by the time it reaches Florida, skies may still appear hazy and oddly tinted. Experts say the dust scatters sunlight, giving the sky a soft, warm hue. And while it makes for surreal sunsets, the real story is atmospheric. These dust layers can choke clouds, trap heat near the surface, and suppress thunderstorms. And that means hotter, hazier days with very little rainfall. And when it does rain, don't be surprised if your car ends up looking like it's been splattered with mud. That's the Sahara washed down in your driveway. It all begins thousands of miles away, where tropical waves stir up winds in the Sahel region and scoop dust into the skies above the Sahara. Those waves are the same systems that can eventually form hurricanes. But when paired with dust, they are more likely to fizzle out. Experts saying that That's the double-edged sword of these plumes. On one hand, they can trigger health alerts. On the other hand, they suppress hurricane activity. Meteorologists saying the biggest plumes typically come between June and late July. And after that, they tend to weaken before crossing the ocean. But for now, the dust factory is in full swing. And nature is once again putting on a show in the skies. Shifting focus for now, Muslims from around the world are gathering in Mecca for the annual Hajj pilgrimage, one of the 5 pillars of Islam. But this year's Hajj brings daunting challenges, a dangerous heat wave, crowd control, new policy changes. Last year, temperatures soared to 47 degrees Celsius and more than 1,300 pilgrims lost their lives, many from heat-related causes. And this year, temperatures are already hitting 41 degrees Celsius. The authorities are urging pilgrims to avoid peak sun, stay covered, and recognize signs of dehydration. An official safety kit recommends light-colored clothing, umbrellas, tips to beat heat exhaustion.
Environmental risks this year include heat strokes, sunstroke, and the potential for rainfall. We are working with our partners in various government sectors to develop many solutions, including shading pedestrian areas, increasing tree planting, increasing sprinklers and heat deterrents. For example, the Royal Commission for Makkah and the Holy Sites has planted 10,000 trees to improve the environment, reduce heat, and provide shade.
During these holy days, we are volunteering to deliver water to the pilgrims, God's guests, and to provide relief from the heat.
But the Hajj is mostly outdoors, and for many, it's a once-in-a-lifetime journey.
This is my first time performing Hajj. May God enable me, God willing. God will write it for me. The rituals have been completed, and we hope that Hajj will be performed by everyone who wishes for it, God willing.
And this year also brings a major change. A ban on children under 12. The authorities say it's a safety precaution given the intense crowds and the heat. Though children are not religiously required to perform Hajj, some parents still try to bring them, hoping to share the moment at Islam's holiest site, the Kaaba. To crack down on unauthorized pilgrimages, Saudi Arabia also suspended short-term visas from 14 countries early this year. In 2023, many of those who died were unregistered and unable to access official amenities like air-conditioned rest stops. Now, anyone caught trying to enter Mecca without a valid Hajj visa faces a fine of up to 20,000 riyals. That's more than $5,000 US. In fact, the temperature is rising. The Saudi government faces a daunting task, preserving the sanctity of Hajj while ensuring the safety of millions of pilgrims. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gampir, signing off, leaving you with Gravitas Worldview. Thanks for watching.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency.